Hi there, welcome to the Healing Migraines Naturally podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Leslie Caesar, and I am a licensed naturopathic doctor, former chronic migraine sufferer, and I have dedicated my life to helping other women with chronic migraines restore their health so that their body stops generating their migraines. So this is sort of like a follow-up episode. So before the holidays, I did a podcast on odor sensitivity amongst migraine sufferers, right? A really notorious topic. I knew that going in, but boy, did we get a response to this podcast. So I want to do a follow-up and go a little bit deeper into it because obviously this is such a big problem with, amongst migraine sufferers. What are we talking about here? This is the notorious odor sensitivity that migraine sufferers are prone to, right? So this can take two main forms. Once that migraine kicks off, once we're in the throes of a migraine, many migraine sufferers are going to notice that they're hypersensitive to sort of normal odors in the environment. I've had many clients where when they're in the middle of a migraine, the thought of cooking, say like ground beef, right? Like you're going to cook some ground beef on the stove. The smell of that is like disgusting, right? So there's particular like food odors that people will find like repulsive. Whereas normally when you're cooking ground beef on the stove, do you really even think that there's an odor to it? I mean, not, right? It's not a food where you're thinking like, oh, this has a big odor to it. But like when you're in that migraine, just like getting the ground beef cooking in the pan, you're like, oh, this is disgusting, this is repulsive, right? Or putting something in the trash can, maybe there's a little odor in your trash can all the time, but you really don't notice it, right? But oh boy, you're in the middle of a migraine, you flip the lid on the trash can, and it smells like it's been rotting in there for a week. Typically what happens then is people start asking their family like, oh, do you smell that? Oh, this smells horrible. And their family, their husband, their kids are like, I don't smell anything, it's not that big of a deal. What are you talking about, right? It can be this hypersensitivity to things in the environment that other people would smell, but they just wouldn't find it extreme or repulsive. And then sometimes people will have so much hypersensitivity that they are able to perceive odors that other people don't perceive. Now, this is different than olfactory hallucinations, which is another phenomenon that happens to a tiny fraction of migraine sufferers. What I'm talking about here is not a hallucination, but the hypersensitivity is so advanced that they can detect, almost like a hound dog. Dogs, they're detecting real odors in the environment that we don't have the ability to perceive, right? So when some people get into that migraine state, they can perceive odors that a normal person wouldn't be able to perceive. So that's sort of the hypersensitivity of odors that can occur in the middle of a migraine flare. And then more sort of symptomatic or more extreme manifestations of this is someone who, even when they're not in the migraine state, they're super sensitive. They're hypersensitive to odors. And so this is where, I may not be having a migraine, but I know that I can't go down the coffee aisle in the grocery store, or I can't go down the detergent aisle in the grocery store because it's just going to be so overwhelming to me. It's going to be so unpleasant. And then many people who have this even heightened hypersensitivity, many of them will actually, quote unquote, get a migraine from the exposure to those odors, right? So it's not just, I can't go down the detergent aisle in the grocery store because it's going to be just overpowering and unpleasant. I'm going to get a migraine if I go down the detergent aisle in the grocery store, right? Or if I go over to my great aunt's house who loves to have all the Glade air fresheners and the perfumes and, the candles and everything, because it's going to be a guaranteed migraine. So those are the kind of the two common levels of odor sensitivity. It's only occurring during the migraine flare itself, and then sort of the more severe manifestation or sort of like later progression stage is it's occurring all the time, even without a migraine, and can actually set someone into that migraine state. So I talked about this a little bit before the holidays because the holiday season is notorious for this because everybody breaks out the pumpkin spice candles and, all this this kind of stuff. You go in. So I was talking about this, and like I say, such a response to this. It obviously hit a nerve. Hi there, it's Dr. Leslie. If you're a woman having 8 or more migraine days a month, let's talk. I'll show you how to drop them to near zero in 90 days. And that's without adding more medication. In fact, you can even lower or possibly even completely wean off of your medication within 90 days. And that's without any agonizing cold turkey withdrawals. So let me tell you about one of my clients, Judy. She was nearly bedridden because she was having to take such strong medications for her migraines, and she could barely function. In fact, she had to close the doors of her small retail business, and she was feeling like a failure. She wondered every day, why was she doomed to suffer from migraines? But just like you, she found this Healing Migraines Naturally podcast, and a spark ignited. She knew that if she could just figure out why these migraines started in the first place, she could restore and recover her health again. So she booked her free consult call, and the rest is history. Now she reports months in between migraines and runs her small business full-time again. She followed the 12-week plan and got incredible results, and she's completely weaned off of all of those preventative medications that were leaving her feeling doped up and committing her to being bedridden. I have worked with women just like Judy from all over the United States overcome migraines naturally. So if you're serious about healing your migraines, then tap the link in the description and book a free consult call with me, just like Judy did. We do cap new clients monthly, so if the calendar's full, the doors are closed for now. So don't wait to reclaim the life you deserve to live. No matter how hopeless things seem now, with expert guidance, your body can heal and recover. So I look forward to chatting with you. Click the link now to schedule your call. And someone reached out and told me that Bath and Body Works, last year, they started this advertising campaign where they're bringing in the scents to spaces, and they're like unleashing the Bath and Body Works scents into these different spaces to promote their products, right? So I was unaware of the campaign, but when I heard this, like a chill went down my spine. I was like, oh my goodness, because what they did over the holiday season is they took over Grand Central Station in New York City, and apparently they brought in like 20 to 30 pounds of the fragrance that they use in their products and disperse this through Grand Central Station to create sort of like an olfactory holiday experience for people. Like you're walking through a pine forest or, something like that as you're going through Grand Central Station. Oh my goodness. Unsuspecting woman who's prone to migraines, trying to commute to work, and walks into Grand Central Station and is hit with all of these odor molecules, right? I mean, what a nightmare. Absolute nightmare for a migraine sufferer, right? So I kind of checked it out. This is being touted in like the advertising community. Like I found some articles in like advertising trade magazines where they're applauding Bath and Body Works for this like innovative marketing approach, and they are doing this like concerts, events, it wasn't just sort of like a one-time thing. This is like the thing that they're going to be doing now. Bath and Body Works wants to sell their soaps, so you're going to be hit with all of this fragrance, right? A lot of people in the natural medicine space, the wellness industry, they've been raising the alarm on this, right? Because you didn't consent to this, right? The general public doesn't realize a very critical factor around the molecules that we smell. I don't know if I've actually explicitly said this on any of my podcasts, because I was actually talking with a client about this just this week, and she didn't know this, and she was shocked when I told her this. So I was like, you know what, we really need to address this on the podcast because it really affects migraine sufferers so much. So when we smell something, okay, when we perceive a smell, an odor, that's because we have inhaled air that contains molecules suspended in the air, right? And we're breathing those in all the time. So those molecules, they are going into our nose and they are hitting the exposed nerves of our olfactory nerves. And so those little molecules, when they hit the tip of the nerve, they stimulate the nerve. Molecules have a three-dimensional shape, and so different shaped molecules are going to stimulate different olfactory nerves. And so when you are breathing in, say, little molecules of bacon that you made in the morning, right? That smells pretty good to most people. They like the smell of that. You're inhaling little suspended molecules that off-gassed from the cooking bacon. And then those little molecules and those shapes, it's almost like a lock and key, if you think of it like that. Those are going to hit different olfactory nerves that are sensitive to those particular shapes, and then the nerve is going to fire. That signal is going to go into your brain. And the little unique combination will translate in your brain, bacon. There's bacon, right? So if you're in the middle of like a Phoenix monsoon, those molecules that you see as dust in the air, those are very, very big molecules, and they're not going to very readily get absorbed into your body. The big ones, your nasal cavity is going to be able to keep outside of your body, right? It's the molecule is too big to get absorbed, and you're going to blow it out of your nose, right? And your body is going to help you do that by making you sneeze, and it's going to start generating mucus, and you're going to blow your nose, and it's going to have all of this orange dust in there from the Phoenix monsoon. But the small molecules, you're going to absorb into your bloodstream. So when you are smelling something, when you are perceiving an odor, you have inhaled toxin molecules. Anything that comes into your body from the external environment becomes a toxin molecule that your body now has to eliminate. Your organs of detoxification have to be up to the job. Your liver is the main organ of detoxification that does a biochemical process called detoxification. You can read about this in the physiology textbook, the biochemistry textbook, and then you're going to have to eliminate those molecules from your body via the skin, which is your largest organ of elimination, your breath. We exhale detoxified toxins, we urinate them out, we defecate them out, and for us women, we will actually pass them in our menstrual flow as well. So women actually have one more avenue of elimination than men have. And this is what my client this week, she was like, "You're kidding me. What? I didn't know this, right? They're toxins, right?" So why is this so pertinent to migraine sufferers? So like I've talked about on the podcast, migraines themselves, headaches, are a major symptom that your body has an overload of metabolic waste material and toxins. This is what I call the second principle, the second thing that's required to recover your health and stop getting migraines. You have to clear the overload of metabolic waste material and toxins from your body. So when you have headaches and migraines, that's a symptom that indicates your toxin bucket, your trash can, is overflowing. If my trash can is pretty much up to the top, I may not have a migraine, right? Feeling pretty good, but little do I know that my bucket is all the way up to the top, and then I go through Union Station and get overloaded with 20 to 30 pounds of odor toxin molecules. Those are going to come into my bloodstream and they're going to overspill my toxin bucket, my trash can, okay? Now I've got a big problem. When that bucket overspills, I'm going to get a migraine. So migraine sufferers, right, we already know that that bucket is towards the top. And then any little addition to that bucket can definitely be enough to tip you over into a migraine state. So that's why you can't go down the coffee aisle. You can't go down the detergent aisle. You're already nearly toppling that bucket over, and any little additional exposure is really going to tip you over into that migraine state. So this is why it's so critical, if you have chronic migraines, that we have to work on what I call this second principle. We've got to get your bucket drained. Your bucket is never going to be empty. Let me clarify this. Because our body is continuously making metabolic waste material. Everything that your cells do generates waste material. Even beneficial products from the cell, like our hormones. Our ovaries, right, pre-menopause, our ovaries are making estrogen every month. That estrogen serves a useful purpose. But once it serves that purpose to stimulate those estrogen-sensitive cells so that they can get the stimulation they need, get the instructions they need to do what they're supposed to do, once that estrogen molecule does that, it's now a metabolic waste material that has to be detoxified and eliminated from the body. Even if we were living in a pristine environment with no man-made toxins, we would still have a toxin bucket or a trash can that has waste material in it because we make the waste material. So, a lot of people within the natural medicine industry, they kind of are always sounding the alarm on environmental toxins and frankly kind of making people overly paranoid, I think, about avoiding environmental toxins. But we've always had environmental toxins. Even before humans had the technology to make the man-made toxins that they're making now, we have never been living in a toxin-free environment. Our body is designed to remove these things, to detoxify them. When you listen to a lot of people within the natural medicine space, they only talk about avoiding exposure. And certainly we want to avoid exposure to these types of things. It's not illegal for Bath and Body Works to do this, but I do think it's unethical to do this. If you want to walk into a Bath and Body Works store, that's your choice, right? But just to have unsuspecting people trying to get to work, getting exposed to this type of thing, I don't think it's ethical, but I guess it's not, they didn't break a law. You only have so much control over what's in our environment, right? Like, we can be conscientious and we can do our best within what's within our capacity, what's within our budget to avoid man-made toxins in the environment. But what's happening to people is they're becoming overly paranoid about this. And we're forgetting that we actually have the capacity to detoxify and eliminate these molecules from our body. So that's what I focus on. Because what I see over and over again is you have a chronic migraine sufferer that's hypersensitive to odors. Once they're in the migraine, they can't walk by the trash can. They can't, be in the kitchen when someone's cooking food, right? Everything's bothering them. Their lotion that normally smells nice to them smells, makes them feel nauseous, right? We got to get that bucket drained. It's never going to be empty, but can we get it at 50%? Can we get it halfway drained? Now I've got a lot of margin. And this is what we want. We want more margin. If there's a wildfire in Canada and it blows into Chicago, what am I going to do? Again, when this hit last summer, a lot of people were posting, oh my goodness, I can't leave the house. I'm having migraines and headaches from this Canadian wildfire smoke. Absolutely. I hear you. But I wasn't getting a migraine last summer because my toxin bucket has some margin. That's what we want. I'm going to absorb some of the molecules that are in that smoke. But I've got room. I've got margin. I can handle it. I'm not going to get overloaded from that. I have a client that's super sensitive to odors. And as we get that toxin bucket drained, what do you know? I went through the grocery store and I forgot that I was in the detergent aisle because I didn't have a problem. It didn't even seem that noticeable to me. Oh my goodness, I'm having a migraine. The migraine isn't severe. And my husband, grilled some steaks and it really didn't bother me. So this is where we want to get to. If we get that toxin bucket drained, as we're exposed to these odor toxin molecules, and as we absorb them into our body, we're not going to have the extreme symptoms. And people don't believe that this is possible. You know, when I start working with a client who's very sensitive to odors, this is what they'll tell me 9 times out of 10. Well, I'm just someone who's sensitive to odors. You know, that's how I'm wired. I guess that's just me, right? They think that this is something like genetic or hardwired, right? That's just their personality or something like that. It's not. It's a symptom. This is something that I'm looking for to improve. And so when I meet with my clients and they have this odor sensitivity symptom, I ask them, all right, sensitivity to odors this week. A little bit better, a little bit worse, exactly the same. We see that change over time, right? The first few times that I ask that question, usually the answer is, yeah, it's the same, exactly the same, no change, right? I got a migraine, my husband was making ground beef, it smelled terrible, I couldn't stand it, I got irritated, right? The whole business. But then, as the weeks go by and we're getting that bucket drained, what do you know? I ask the same question, different answer. You know what? That's funny you asked me that. I don't remember noticing any odors, because this is a symptom. Once it goes away, you forget about it. Right? So then the response is like, yeah, that's so weird. Yeah, I don't remember smelling anything. I don't remember. And then it like dawns on you, oh my goodness, right? I have the same husband that cooks the same steaks that normally, you know, annoy me, are disgusting smell, right? I have the same trash can. My Aunt Winnie has the same perfume, but nothing happened, right? That's when it starts to dawn on you that this isn't genetic. This isn't something that's hardwired. This isn't just, you know, how you were made. This is actually a symptom, and it's a toxicity symptom. And if we get that bucket drained, you are going to be able to tolerate odors much, much better. So I applaud the people in the natural medicine space who are working on raising awareness, trying to, you know, get legislation change, or, you know, at a minimum, trying to put public pressure on companies to not do stuff like this, okay? But my focus is a different focus, working with people to get that bucket drained. They can continue to function and their body doesn't generate these toxicity symptoms. Also, for migraine sufferers, what's important is we kind of get out of that paranoid state, right? Because the migraine phenomenon itself generates a lot of anxiety, paranoia within us, right? Because migraines are so insidious, you can wake up in the morning feeling fine, and by 4 p.m. you're pulled over in a parking lot vomiting. Ask me how I know, right? Already there's a lot of anxiety. What if something happens? I got a big thing going on. How am I going to feel, right? So part of the recovery process from chronic migraines is to come out of this state of anxiety and paranoia and start to rebuild trust in your body. So I hope this was helpful to you to do a little bit deeper dive into what's going on with these odors. I think you can relate to the anxiety and paranoia that is generated with chronic migraines, and the paranoia that any little thing is going to tip us into a migraine and we're not going to feel good, and we've got to avoid things and bubble wrap ourselves to protect ourselves from all of these triggers, right? And you can't live like that. I know this from personal experience. And while there are man-made toxins in the environment, right? I mean, again, it's not ideal, but it's still a wonderful, wonderful world that we live in, that we can enjoy and flourish in and live into our full potential. And that's really what I want to focus on with you and with my clients. So thanks again for joining me today. We'll talk to you soon.